Facebook Live. My name is Kelsey Harkness. I am a senior news producer and reporter here at the Daily Signal. Today I'm really excited because I am joined by one of my favorite people here in Washington, D.C., who I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, Katie Pavlich, best-selling author, Fox News contributor, Town Hall. You're busy.
I'm busy. It's a good time to be busy in. There's a lot happening.
Exactly. So we're at CPAC. We're actually seated right next to her. So I thought I'd grab her over because if you didn't have a chance to see it, we launched a new video series I'm working on, Underreported. And the first issue we decided to dive into is suppressors, or more commonly known as gun silencers. And I brought Katie in here because I myself am quite a beginner with shooting. I actually got to go to the NRA range and try some of these out. I tried shooting guns with suppressors and without. The first thing I learned is that they do not silence guns.
Nope, they do not.
And the reason that we actually took on this report is because this is one of the next battlegrounds for gun rights activists on Congress. So I'm going to pass it off to Katie and tell me, what experience have you had with suppressors given you grew up shooting?
I grew up shooting, didn't have a ton of experience with suppressors growing up.
Well, they're hard to get.
They're hard to get, they are very expensive, which we'll get to in a minute, why that's ridiculous and that's hopefully going to be changed soon. But the first thing you said makes me really excited that you're getting into shooting. We've talked about this in the past. But the second thing is the myth that I think everyone, especially in the media, keeps perpetuating, and that is that suppressors silence firearms to the point where you can't even hear what's going on. So we've seen in Hollywood movies, Al Capone style, people using firearms incorrectly, but using them for crimes, and the suppressor that's on it silences the gun completely so that they kind of get away from the police or the other people can't hear what's going on. That it couldn't be further from the truth. Suppressors simply eliminate the sound enough and suppress the sound so that it is not damaging to a person's hearing. Because as we all know, one of the main safety issues that we have when we go shooting is that we cover our ears, because there are very serious problems that come from shooting without hearing protection.
Well, I'll just say for a lot of new shooters like myself, that's something I didn't even know. Of course, when you see pictures, you always do see people wearing hearing protection. But I never, until I got onto the range and heard how loud a gunshot actually is, you don't realize how important hearing protection is. And what I also learned in taking on this report is within the military community, the most common disability among service members is hearing loss.
Yep. Absolutely, and it's a very serious, painful thing to have to go through. It's a lifelong injury. It's not something that can be easily fixed. It's something you have to live with the rest of your life. And so, luckily technology's gotten better to help with that. But the point is that we have a tool now in the suppressor. Silencer Co. is one of the companies that was ahead of the game in producing these pieces of hardware, essentially, that go onto your firearm to really eliminate that risk when it comes to shooting with your friends, shooting for sport, going hunting. And so this is a tool that we can use to make sure that people aren't damaging their hearing. And right now, the government makes it very expensive and very invasive to get this tool. There's a tax you have to pay, $250 tax.
On every suppressor is what I learned. It doesn't matter how much the suppressor costs.
Right.
Whether, this isn't to say a suppressor, whatever, costs $50, but $50 to $1,000, it's going to be the same $200 to $250 tax, which a lot of people don't realize. But I will say that in working on this report, I heard from people who are against guns and suppressors that, well, maybe the reason suppressors don't actually show up in crimes is because this tax is working, because the government makes it so hard to purchase suppressors. What do you say to them?
Well, they also claim that what they call assault weapons show up in crimes, and we have the data to prove that criminals are using, cheap, inexpensive, bad handguns for their crimes. They're not using the very thing that the left and these anti-gun advocates want to ban, which is sporting rifles. And so this idea that criminals are going to go out and buy an extra piece of hardware to silence their firearms, A, isn't true, because it doesn't silence them. It simply suppresses the noise. And you can still hear it. It's still very loud. It just, again, to emphasize, isn't loud enough to damage your hearing. And so criminals aren't going to go the extra step to buy an extra piece of equipment. And this tax really does impact people who are gun owners. It impacts the millions of gun owners in the country who want to go out, have a good time, and keep their hearing in the process.
So for those who aren't familiar, it's again called the Hearing Protection Act that's being considered in Congress right now. It is getting some pushback. We'll see if it's able to move forward. But what's also interesting is that a lot of countries in Europe, you're able to just walk in and purchase a suppressor. I don't even think without going through a background check. But here in the United States, it is actually, when it comes to a lot of firearms in America, it's more difficult to purchase a firearm than it is to purchase a suppressor.
Right, it is, and it's ridiculous because a suppressor is a piece of hardware. It isn't a firearm. It isn't something that can shoot itself. It isn't a dangerous piece of equipment. And yet here we have to pay, as you mentioned, a tax, $250 tax on every single suppressor that you own. You have to go through a background check to be able to own them, and you give up your Fourth Amendment protections because ATF can come in and search your house whenever they feel like it because you have this tax and suppressor. So, as you mentioned, they're trying to get legislation through Congress to change this law. It's going to take a while, so if you want a suppressor now, feel free to go out and buy one.
It's going to take 8 to 12 months is
right,
what I learned is the
least,
average waiting time.
It'll probably be double. But in terms of getting this changed in Congress, just making it another piece of hardware is what they really have to talk about. And the fact that it really does help people prevent hearing loss, and it doesn't pose a threat to the public, no matter what the lies from the other side have to say.
Now, in researching this issue, I came across this beautifully produced video that you were in, where you were actually teaming up with a company that produces suppressors, going out with your dad and shooting. And you took us on this whole story, and I got to know a little bit about your background and how shooting has really been something in your family for a long time. Can you tell us what got this project started?
I got into shooting. My shooting style and why I am an advocate for the Second Amendment has really evolved. When I was little, it was my dad taking me out hunting, and then as I moved away from home, it was more about self-defense, right? But I went to South Texas with my dad. Silencer Co. brought us on this hunt, and we went hunting with suppressors, and we were white-tailed deer hunting, and it was so much fun. Way down south in San Ignacio at Buena Suerte Ranch, and we had amazing guides who were there. Leroy was mine, and so it really was just an amazing time to be with my dad because hunting was really a big part of who I am and how I grew up. And as you know, when you get older and life happens and you get to adulting, it gets a little difficult to find that time. So, but it really was interesting to see how much of a difference it made to be hunting with a suppressor versus when you have without one. I mean, it really is so much more comfortable and more enjoyable to be hunting and shooting that way.
Now, one thing I learned in that video is your dad actually journals as he goes out and goes shooting. Can you tell me about that and what he likes to write about?
My whole life, my dad, and he goes on hunts.
I wondered if this fed into your career as a reporter.
Well, my mom was an English major and a professor, and then eventually was a small business owner. But my dad is a teacher. But he would take his journal, leather-bound journal, on all of our hunts and all of his own hunts. And I always remember watching him writing down what we were doing. And I had mine too, but I wasn't as good at it, ironically. But yeah, that was a big part of my memories with him is watching him write down the stories. And I'm so grateful that he's done that so that someday I can look back and read those stories and remember all the good times. So kind of comes full circle with what I do now.
Yeah, so for those interested in watching the video, the video that you were in, where can they find it?
At silencerco.com.
Awesome. Okay, last question for you. Since you are very involved in the firearms community, what else is next on the legislative agenda?
Well, national reciprocity is something that has been on the table for consideration for a very long time, meaning people who cross state lines who have a concealed carry permit aren't necessarily punished because they simply crossed over a bridge or made a wrong turn on a freeway that meant that they crossed a state line. There's been a number of cases of people, especially from Philadelphia going into New Jersey, Pennsylvania going to New Jersey, who have a concealed carry permit in Pennsylvania that is valid, but as soon as they cross into New Jersey, they're felons all of a sudden. So we're trying to get rid of that. And interestingly enough, when Senate Democrats were trying to push through gun control legislation a couple of years ago after Sandy Hook, that legislation failed. And although national reciprocity legislation, which was voted on at the same time, also failed, it got more votes than the gun control legislation did. And so this is something that certainly could pass. I think it should pass for the sake of keeping good people out of really bad situations. New Jersey Governor Chris Christie has pardoned a number of people who had driven into New Jersey on a Pennsylvania permit by mistake.
Good use of his time.
Good use of his time, yes. We think he should get back to doing more of that kind of thing. So that's certainly something that's on the table. And really, gun rights really thrive at the local level. If you look at the state legislatures across the country, they've done a ton to, move Second Amendment rights forward. Just this week, the New Hampshire legislature pushed through constitutional carry in that state. And so we're on offense now, and it's a good time for Second Amendment advocates to really push through some of the things that haven't been able to get through.
That's great. Well, for those interested in following Katie's work, check her out on Twitter, Facebook. She's everywhere.
She's my dog. He's on Instagram.
Who I'm a big fan of. I got a dog not too long after Katie, and we've been bonding over our troubles with the puppies. She had a better experience in training than I have, so mine's still a work in progress. Yeah. But Katie, thank you so much for joining us. It's great chatting with you. If you're interested in following up on both these videos, we will post them in the comment section. We thank you for joining us. Stay tuned. We'll be live all throughout CPAC, and have a great afternoon.